How are
Hi,
you
everyone.
doing? Yes, we are here. This is our last live of the summer. Makes me sad.
I know.
I hate winter and I kind of hate fall. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like one of those
Really?
people.
I love
Eh,
fall.
Oh, I don't like. I mean, fall's okay to me, except for I just know what it leads to,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
therefore I
That's
kind
what
of
I
hate
used
it.
to say, but
Yeah.
DC is so hot and humid in the summer. I'm always a little relieved when it's over. Like I'd rather, and it's never that cold. It's like the 50s in December and January, so it's like
Yeah,
maybe
that's
40s.
freezing. That's really
Yeah.
cold. Okay.
I grew up in upstate New York, so
Okay,
to
well, I
me
mean, I
it's
guess yeah.
like it's practically
No,
uh,
I've been known to turn the heater on if it's like 78 degrees outside. If I catch a cold, I'm not even kidding you. Yeah, if I
that's
catch a
so
chill.
funny.
Mm.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it is 78 degrees right now, and I have a long sleeve on. So
Oh wow. Yeah. I was gonna say, is
let's.
it cold there?
Well, it
Anyway,
all depends.
but
It
we
depends.
we do have to leave a little early tonight because it's my husband's fantasy football draft. It's one of second biggest night of the year. The first biggest one is fantasy baseball. So I have to take care of the little one, which he usually does while we're doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah. So should we what should we start with? Tom Alexandrovich
Yeah,
or
let's start
yeah.
with him. So Tom Alexandervich, for those who don't know, is the Israeli official who was the executive director of the Israeli Cyber Consulate, which is, I believe, a private company contracted with the Israeli government. It gets very, very fishy, very as far as like how he is interconnected with the Israeli government because he's not an official employee of the government, yet he did work directly under Benjamin Netanyahu. And for those who don't know, and I'm sure there's absolutely no one watching this who doesn't know, Alexandrovich was arrested in Las Vegas on the 7th of August and charged with attempting to lure a child from their parents for sex. Pretty much. It's a very specific charge that has very specific elements that you have to meet in order to be charged with this. Mainly, you have to make contact with someone under the age of 16, so it has to be 15 or younger, and you have to essentially guide them in a way to lure them from their parents. Um, in order to engage with sex. So he, I guess, instructed this girl of how to invade her parents and to meet him, and then told her to bring a condom with her. So obviously, the intent to have sex. So he was arrested for this. And he was immediately allowed to flee back to Israel after he was made his bail. And
Well, to be more specific for our critics out there, I won't say any names.
yeah,
He was not required to surrender his passport. I think that's the sticking point
right.
for me. I've gotten in some arguments with certain people who shall not be named, or maybe they shall. I don't know. You can decide.
We all know I'm
About
gonna be naming them.
that's yeah. I mean, I think it boils down to the fact it's highly unusual for a judge not to require a foreign national
Yeah.
to turn their passport in when they're charged with a serious crime. And one of the allegations somebody has made is like, well, it's basically a made up crime and they shouldn't do these sting operations. I mean, you can have those objections, but it is a crime and he is facing
Oh yeah,
serious prison
yeah,
time.
yeah.
So that's a reason to flee the jurisdiction, and that's something that judges look at when they impose conditions of bail or bond, which usually include turning over your passport if you're for it. So
Right. Yeah. And so, very interesting case nonetheless. It's weird because he was, in fact, this Israeli. He's an official. He's the head of their cyber directorate. He is in charge of, apparently, at one point, post October 7th, he was in charge of essentially monitoring all, like, the cyber directorate was in charge of monitoring all social media and then submitting something like 60% of all of the requests to take down, quote unquote, like anti-Israel content, anti-Semitic content, which they basically conflated anti-Israel content and made it, said, oh,
yeah.
it's anti-Semitic. So getting them to take it down, 60% of the content that was taken down. I know if you're like me, I shared a lot of videos there in November and December of 2023. I was getting flagged constantly. I just knew at one point that my account was going to get banned because I was sharing videos that had, I even got account warnings when I retweeted someone else's video. I didn't even share it myself. I just retweeted them. I had never had that happen before, but no, they were saying
Yeah.
just you retweeting. And all it was just actual, really gruesome videos of the, of the content, or I should say aftermaths of bombs and things like that. And then some of it just got so bad that I was like, I can't share this stuff anymore because
Yeah.
it depresses me too much.
Yeah.
I do still share it. It's this thing I struggle with all the time, right? About what's appropriate and what's not. But I do think people need to see, and especially in those early days, some of the videos were so graphic. They are forever seared into my mind, some of them, So this is what this guy did. He should have known better, right? He should have known. And so that was weird. That was very weird. I still think that there's something much more, and there's something much bigger to this story than what we're being told. But what happens is everybody's like, oh, he's going to come back. He's going to come back. Why are you guys freaking out? You guys, blah, blah. And what do you know? His first court date rolls around, and does Tom Alexandervich come back? No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
Of course not. His lawyer shows up for him, and now he's been granted a new court date, and he's going to zoom it in, right? He's never coming back, okay, ever. And now there is a question about whether or not he had quote unquote diplomatic immunity, which I think is going to be very interesting because to my understanding, he was here that his company is a private company and is not an Israeli owned, government owned company. And he is not a diplomat of the Israeli government. So how he is going to claim diplomatic immunity will be very interesting to see.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very telling if the State Department helps him to get away with this BS, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's going to really bring on the radar. What do you mean Israeli diplomats are allowed to come into the U.S. and act with impunity and attempt to lure American children to have sex with them after a show at Cirque du Soleil,
What is another claim that has been brought up by an independent journalist, the same one that I'm referring to, I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about, and arguing with you about this, is, sorry, I completely lost my train of thought where I was going with that.
Michael Tracy. Michael Tracy is the one.
Yeah. No. This will come as a shock to everybody, I think.
It was a doctor. That's it.
This was it. That there's no evidence that he was ever told the girl was 14 and that she was using an app that you have to show that you're 18 and provide proof. And so, there was nothing in the arrest report about her being allegedly 14. I mean, she doesn't exist because it was a sting operation, but like the idea is that you have the mindset of you're intending to go have sex with a 14, 15-year-old or whatever.
Right. No. So number one, on the arrest report, we are told that the arresting officer was posing as a 15-year-old girl. So we have to presume, and I'm going to give the government this tiny benefit of the doubt that they did in fact inform him that she was 15. Number two, Michael Tracy keeps kind of bringing it up. Oh, you had to be 18 to use this app. Again, I personally signed up for the app using my phone. I did not. You have to say that you're 18, but that's it. You don't have to prove anything. There is no age verification. Age verification is only required when you live in a municipality or country that requires it. So if you go onto like the Pure app website, or excuse me, on the there's a bunch of like review websites that they'll talk about people saying in like the UK where you have to prove you're of age in order to use that. The U.S., no state actually has that law that pertains, that to my knowledge, to dating apps, which is what this is classified as. So even like I live in North Carolina, which we have age verification for pornography sites, but this isn't considered a pornography site. So again, it wasn't required. Also, Jose Vega, who lives in New York State, he and I were talking. He signed up for the app. He actually recorded himself signing up for the app. He said he was 18 and that was it. Boom, you're in.
Yeah.
So
And I
Yeah.
mean, like, I'm pretty skeptical of, law enforcement, and I was a public
Mhm.
defender, and that would be a
Mhm.
weird job to have if you weren't. But I mean, it again, like, if there was nothing, no evidence that he thought she was under 18, then I
It's
doubt they would have arrested him. It could happen. I mean, sometimes that's why like charges and convictions aren't the same thing. But
right.
but again, none of that changes the fact too that he was facing these charges, and
Right.
that it's odd that he wasn't required to give up his passport in the
Right.
meantime. Like, even if you think this shouldn't be a crime, even if you think the evidence, I mean, you don't know what the evidence
Hmm.
is. Like, prosecutors don't show their hand at this stage to the public. That's like
Right.
not a thing. But, even like those things aside, it's still very bizarre. So there's obviously
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
strange about it.
It's very weird to me. It's a weird app. I've talked about this a little bit, but I like looked into the app itself. I found it extremely suspicious that he was on that particular app because it's an app
Yeah.
that almost no one has ever heard of. It
Mm,
only has about 70,000 users in all of the United States. So the idea that he would go on there looking for an underage girl was very weird to me. Again, presuming that the government does have evidence in the conversation. And these are really, really standard kind of sting operations. So the idea that they would skip over quite literally the most important part, right? Like you couldn't arrest him if you hadn't told him you were 15,
right.
right?
And there are these things,
Presumably. Yeah.
obviously, I mean, if this goes to trial, which it may not, because it's
Yeah, there's no
unusual
way.
to have a trial in absentia, but I guess it does actually happen.
Yeah.
If it does go to trial, you might have experts testify about like whether it's a known thing that this app is used for the purpose. It might not
Right.
be in there, but it might be a sort of thing that people who use it know.
Right.
That's kind of the underground,
Yep.
whatever,
See, yeah,
child
and
porn
it's
business.
right. When I signed up or when I went on the app, I was just extremely disturbed. A lot of the imagery that they use, if you're just there for fun, it's like this little like candy cane, or excuse me, it's like a lollipop. Is
Yeah.
there for fun. A lot of symbolism in the actual sign up of the app. It's this like dark demon looking thing. That's their actual picture. The whole thing is weird.
Yeah.
Not going to try to get into all of the stuff, but when I started looking at it, I was like, this is odd that he would choose this website. And we have a man who is a cybersecurity expert feeling extremely confident, right? That he can go on this app
Yeah.
and look for a girl 15 and meet up with her. So I thought that was weird, and I do think that there's a little bit more, but I can't. Obviously, I haven't seen all the evidence, haven't seen all the discovery. Some people
Yeah.
think that discovery should all be released immediately in the arrest report. That's actually not how the law works, and you should maybe, I don't know, take a freaking intro to criminal law 101 before you start
Yeah.
demanding things like that. It's a little weird, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
But
I mean, also, like, you could just interview, attorneys, but I don't think that the person we're talking about, Michael Tracy, well, got the answers he wants from attorneys, which is probably why he's,
just decided to strike out on
yeah.
his own. I mean, and he's like he likes to flap out in there in the wind by himself anyways, as we've seen.
Yeah.
Moving on to our next story, which
Yeah.
is him and Daryl
Daryl
Cooper.
Cooper. I promise we won't
Daryl.
talk about Michael Tracy all night.
Janine knows I'm not a fan of Michael Tracy. Okay. I'm not. And Michael Tracy is no fan of mine as well. So the feelings are very, very mutual. In fact, he refuses to call me by my name. He will only refer to me as Crazy Lady. It is the most immature, pathetic thing you have ever seen in your life. I promise you that. But so Michael Tracy decides to set his sights on Daryl Cooper this week, right? He's been just kind of like going down a list, going after all of these Epstein critics, right? Or quote unquote Epstein researchers and whatnot.
Yeah.
And he likes to pick apart little things. And he honed in on this interview that Michael Tracy did with that Daryl Cooper did with Tucker Carlson. It was a 3-hour interview. It was a long. I watched it. I actually thought it was great. I had to listen at 2 times the speed because it was really, really long. But he gets to the very end, and Daryl Cooper says that he says and I quote, he gives what he claims is a quote from a federal judge about Epstein colluding with the government to. He says that a court found that Epstein had colluded or had engaged in conspiracy.
Conspired, I think was the word he
Conspired
used.
with yes, it wasn't colluded, it was conspired, had engaged in conspiracy with the government, and that the government, that the court ruled that his NPA, his non-prosecution agreement, had been thrown out because of that conspiracy. And to his credit, Michael Tracy is wrong that the judge did not specifically accuse them of conspiracy. Well, he didn't use the word conspiracy or conspire.
You mean Daryl Cooper was wrong?
Daryl Cooper was wrong. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Michael Tracy was right.
Yeah.
That the judge didn't say that, but the judge did accuse them of. Sorry, my dog is gonna bust in.
I mean,
the judge did accuse them of essentially of conspiring.
He didn't use the word, but if you're reading it, he's saying, it was highly unusual. They were sort of working together in a secretive, unusual manner. I mean, I don't know that, the exact words he used.
He
again,
says,
but that's clearly...
It's good because it was so obviously, yes, they did. The judge said, and I quote, the U.S. Attorney's Office, or he calls it the office, did not consult or confer with any victims about the non-prosecution agreement before it was signed. Epstein's counsel was aware that the office was deliberately keeping the non-prosecution agreement secret from the victims, and indeed had sought assurances to that effect. So when Epstein's lawyers are talking in secret with the government, the office, to keep something secret from the victims, what is that? That is, of course, conspiring. They are conspiring to keep the victims in the dark. This is...
And I guess Cooper could have said, these weren't the exact words, but it was clear that the implication was they were conspiring. Okay, I think you're nitpicking a little bit for a podcast.
And again,
he wasn't writing a legal brief.
Right. He was at the 2 hour and 35-minute mark at this point. So the guy's already been talking for hours. And and I just thought that was weird. I was like, hold up. You honed in on this. And I had already read this brief. I had seen it. It's only 33 pages long. It's actually a very good brief to read. It's fascinating. And I knew that the court had found that they had been working in secret together. So I was like, what the hell? Why would you pick this? This, of all things, to kind of hone in on. But that's what Michael Tracy does. That's his whole shtick, right? He can misspeak all day long, every day, right? In fact, in his own article later on, he claims that it was Alex Acosta who had federally intervened and ensured that Jeffrey Epstein had faced justice, which is total bullshit. Alex Acosta was the lawyer. He was the actual U.S. attorney on the case, but it was the assistant U.S. attorney who had done all the legwork. She was the one who brought the case. She had a 60-count indictment ready to go that could have sent Jeffrey Epstein to prison for decades. And Alex Acosta stepped in and said, actually, we're going to give him full immunity for all of these charges. And in exchange, he's going to plead guilty to 2 state charges, and then he's going to go to local county jail, and they're actually going to let him out 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And, that's actually real justice. Which is so nuts. But of course, as far as Michael Tracy is concerned, he is, he would say, well, blah, blah, he can misspeak all he wants to, but if anyone else does it, then it's like, oh, all your credibility is in the tank. Everything should get flushed down the toilet. And even if people do occasionally make errors, as long as they admit it, not that I'm saying there was an error here, but as long as they admit it and correct it, that's okay. That's what happens, when you're dealing with lots of information and occasionally you get something a little bit wrong. But yes, he's, and I don't know, whatever. I'm not gonna psychoanalyze him. I'm gonna stop doing that. Janine is so much nicer than me. She's so if you could see our text, she is so sweet, and I am like, I earlier. Can I say this? We're not gonna sidebar. I'm just gonna say, Michael Tracy sent her a message earlier, right? Basically complaining about me. And I wrote her back, I said, you tell him that I said that he should definitely make a fucking post crying about this. And I look forward to responding. And she writes back, she's like, okay, I'll say that, but maybe a little bit nicer.
For what it's worth, I actually feel kind of bad for him. I've met him a couple of times. He's always been like very nice to me. I don't know what is going on with him. I suspect maybe something. So I'm like trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's been really awful to you. So I'm also like,
Yeah.
I'm not like, it's getting harder and harder to like give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll say that.
Yeah, I was gonna let it go, and then when I saw that he like again refuses to use my name. He knows my name, right? But he only will call me crazy lady. The dude is like a raging misogynist. That's what it really comes down to. Something else that really annoyed me about him when I started really looking into the way that he's covered this is that he has never once acknowledged the existence of Anne Marie Villafana, who was the assistant U.S. attorney on the Epstein case. She did really good work. She worked very hard on it, and he just pretends like she doesn't exist. She's the one that brought the whole thing up to Alex Acosta, and Acosta is the one, when Villafana was not willing to budge on this with his lawyers, that was when the lawyers were like, well, we don't want to talk to you anymore. We want to go straight to Alex Acosta. And then come to find out, I found another little tidbit about this. One of Epstein's lawyers that he specifically hired is a woman named Lily Sanchez. It's either Lisa Sanchez or Lily Sanchez. She had actually had a sexual relationship with one of the U.S. attorneys that was working on the case. Yep. And they never disclosed it at all the whole time. So this guy, his name is Matt Menschel. He was like the head of the criminal division, and he ended up leaving before the case was completely closed. But again, so they had this sexual relationship, never gets disclosed. Then, of course, Alex Acosta apparently at some point decides maybe I want to be a Harvard professor. And of course, Alan Dershowitz was one of Epstein's lawyers. And Alan Dershowitz, of course, has tenure at Harvard. And then there was another thing where I guess Alex Acosta at one point wanted to write a book or something, and he was looking at some kind of link between, I forget, it was something about the Kirkland and Ellis again, and he thought maybe I should come off of it, and then it gets stopped. There's just all of these very, very interpersonal things that go on between Epstein's lawyers and the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the only person who wasn't caught up in any of this is the woman who brought the case to begin with, who ends up getting kind of bullied out, right? But you think that Michael Tracy has ever acknowledged her existence? No, not that I've seen anyways. I know he's going to say, no, there was this one article that I wrote, and then she was in it. Bullshit. Okay, we know what we're talking about. I know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
I word searched all of his articles. I couldn't find her name. So.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm gonna stay away from psychoanalyzing him on a live stream, but we can do that in private.
Yeah, I know. It's all me. Janina is much nicer, and she actually doesn't take as much issue with him. Actually, she just ignores. She's better than me. She ignores him.
Well, I mean, he's also not attacking me directly. So it's a little easier for me to, just. But
he just, he decided to go after Daryl Cooper. I wrote a long thread. Cooper followed up with another thread. Cooper had like a death in his family. It sounds like it was immediate family, and he's the one who gave the eulogy on it. And just for people who don't know, these things are really, they can be very exhausting when somebody picks through your work. And again, Michael Tracy, by his own admission, worked on this for like 2 weeks, and then he expects an answer from Daryl Cooper in 2 days, right? And it takes a long time to sift through this and be able to write back. And I thought it was so crazy because he did an interview with Thaddeus Russell, who Janine knows, and I'm like mutuals with him. I don't particularly know him. I thought Thaddeus did a good job because he starts kind of like honing in on Daryl Cooper, and Cooper had not responded at this point. But then there's this very weird clip, and I'm going to link it here so people can see. Because I think this is important, and I think it's interesting that after the whole, Tracy does his whole thing where he says like, oh, Cooper made up a quote from a federal judge. He pretends like he invented it out of thin air, right?
Yeah.
Which again, as we have already read, he did not invent this out of thin
No,
air.
it was heavily implied. It was the implication
Right.
of that paragraph.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
it's a summary. I mean, it's a way of summarizing.
Exactly. Yeah. And he should not have said that, this is a quote. He should have said this is, a paraphrase or whatnot.
Yeah.
This is what the judge said, because it is essentially what he said. But he should not have said direct quote, or I don't think he said direct quote. He said this is a quote from a judge, but whatever.
Yeah.
He should have used different phrasing. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
But so he kind of like does this, and then he goes in with Thaddeus Russell, and Thaddeus is friends with Daryl Cooper, and he says basically, so don't you think that brings all of his other work into question? And he asks Daryl Cooper essentially to denounce, or excuse me, he asks Thaddeus to denounce Daryl Cooper, which was it's so weird. And he's like, no, I want you to speak on him. And Thaddeus just won't. He's like, no, that's my friend. And I do think he was wrong here. And he's like, but no, don't you think that brings all of his other work into question? Don't you think, and I'm like, this is interesting that this is the attack. Like, what do you mean it brings all his other work into question?
Yeah.
Because as we all know, that Daryl Cooper has been a prolific critic of the state of Israel, right? A very, very heavy critic of the state of Israel. And so I think it's interesting the way that Michael Tracy has chosen his targets on this. And now, of course, he's going to say, oh, I've just been choosing the people who say that there are Epstein experts and whatnot. But there's been a lot of Epstein experts. And yet he has chosen to go specifically after Ryan Dawson, Whitney Webb, and now Daryl Cooper.
And you.
He doesn't really come for me very often. He came for me on another thing, but he ignores me on a lot of stuff, which is fine by me because, again, I'm not a fan and I don't actually want to engage with him at all. And so he and I have gotten into it on a space a couple times. I have decided I will not enter a space with him again unless I can have a guarantee by the administrator that they will cut his mic off. He has a whole technique where he just starts rambling. He's very pushy and he won't shut up. And it ends up, you have to yell over him. And I end up sounding, because I already have a high pitched voice, like a screeching maniac.
Well, should we get to our other topics, since I think we have two and we only have like 20 minutes?
Yes.
So, Catholic school shooting. And I think the thing we everyone has their takes on this and thinks it proves whatever they want about certain groups of people or whatever. But I'm not referring to any specific group, but because the person clearly had so many causes and none of it makes any sense.
Yeah.
I think one thing that we both sort of noticed was that DHS has now allocated a lot of money to they say houses of worship, or nobody should have to feel unsafe in their house of worship, as like alluding to the fact that because of this shooting, which occurred at a Catholic school, I repeat. And then it turns out in June, they gave a bunch of money, like I forgot the number now, $100 million?
Yep. So they have a Catholic schools, or it's not Catholic schools, excuse me. So there's a program with the government, and it is allocates funds for security measures for religious institutions. So it can be schools, synagogues, churches, temples. Gosh, the word is escaping me. What?
Mosque.
Mosque. There you go. Sorry. And anything like that. And it's up to $250,000 a year, which is, we'll get to that in a second because I know exactly what you guys are thinking. But there is it's $250,000 per year per institution to use on anything to kind of enhance security. So like security cameras, lighting, things like that. I do believe that they cannot use it on actual security personnel. Like you can't hire guards. I believe that. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong on that, but I do think that is a caveat, and that's actually a separate funding issue kind of thing. But historically, 90 to 95% of these funds every year have always gone to Jewish institutions. And the fund, I believe, started in like 2010, and it was usually around like $50 million a year. And then it kind of started to grow, of course, as all funds for the government do grow, until after October 7th. In that first year, the Congress allocated an extra $400 million on top of what was, I believe, a $200 million. So it was like 600, or maybe it was even $675 million. And that was for fiscal year 2024. Now we are in fiscal year 2025, about to enter 2026. And at one point, they were pushing for $1 billion in funding. This was all of these like Zionist organizations. And any religiously affiliated organization can get it. So it doesn't have to be a church, right? It can be a Zionist organization that's Jewish and whatnot. And so it's really pretty nuts. But in this the first or the latest tranche that was announced in June, it was $200 million that they released, and all of it went to Jewish organizations. All of it, every dime. Mm-hmm. Now they've released another 100 million, and it's going to be up for grabs essentially. So all of that initial 200 million just went to Jewish organizations. Now the new round is 100 million, and it could go, they're saying, basically anyone can apply, which people were getting kind of pissed. Like, what do you mean? You already gave all of it to the Jewish, why is, if you've already given 200 million to Jewish organizations, why wouldn't you only make it so that, I don't know, only Christian organizations can apply? But of course you can't do that because, again, you can't look like you're, preferencing or, giving preference to a certain group over another. And I think people are a little pissed. Like, what do you mean that all of this money went to just Jewish organizations in the U.S. and not to Christian or Muslim or even, we have a lot of, we have Hindus, we have Buddhists, we have Sikhs in this country. And the school shootings have been happening at the Christian schools, you know?
And as I've beat the drum on this one, but the main, frankly, victims of actual physical violence have been Palestinians or Arabs since October 7th. That's a little less true recently because there was the Jewish museum shooting and then the Colorado incident, which targeted, I think they were targeting pro-Israel people. They weren't targeting Jewish people just for being Jewish. Was. It's a little bit different, but in both cases. But, for the first year and a half, it was like the main incidents had been the little boy who was stabbed by his landlord, who was Palestinian, stabbed to death like 30 times. And then the children or child, I think it was 2, but one was more injured. In Dallas, who were almost drowned by a crazy woman. They were like Palestinian children, and they were targeted by her for that reason. And then there was the shooting of the 3 students in Vermont who were wearing keffiyehs. That shooter looked to be like kind of crazy and didn't have a clear ideology, as far as I know. I actually haven't heard anything about that in a while, but they were wearing keffiyehs, which makes you think, this was like a couple months after October 7th. I think it was Thanksgiving 2023. So shortly after. That may have been whatever, but it's very, I think it's frustrating, again, this like singling out of some groups for like special treatment and like their lives are more important. I think that's hard for some of us.
Well, it's BS. And to me, I'm like of the opinion that I actually am not, I don't think that I think this is kind of a waste of money. Whether it's going to Jewish organizations or Christian organizations, I think it's kind of BS that these kids were targeted again. Both of the 2 main shootings that have happened. There's the Nashville one, and then there's this one. The shooters actually had relationships with the school. That in the Nashville one, the girl had gone to the school, and now in this one, the shooter's mom had worked at the school, so he like knew the school inside and out. He had drawn all of these kind of diaphragm or maps, diagrams. Diaphragms. He had drawn all these maps and whatnot. So again, I don't think that this money would have happened, but it's just interesting because again, we see this huge tranche of money and we know what's going to happen to it. We know that. And To their credit, there are some kind of fiscal hawks on the right who started digging in on this because they were pissed off when they saw that this money that again that 200 million that got released in June only went to Jewish organizations. And so what's interesting is it's supposed to be $250,000 is the max grant. Yet some of these have these like dual, they'll have like a day
Mm,
school and then they'll have kind of like a synagogue thing. And apparently they're applying separate, is from what I understand. And then they're doubling up on the money, right? So
right.
the oil field rando guy, he found today that there was a synagogue in Puerto Rico who received $450,000
Wow.
in grant money, right?
Wow.
Which is just
Yeah,
nuts.
and yeah, why are religious institutions getting money? Whatever from the government.
Hmm.
That's just strange. And
Right.
kind of counter to the First Amendment, I would say. But I'm not an expert in First
Well, I
Amendment
think
religious
anyone,
stuff.
yeah, I think anyone can apply. That's what they'll say.
Yeah, yeah. These, I mean, anyway, if a crazy person wants to do something terrible, they're gonna do it and like find a
They
way to
are.
circumvent the security. So like these are not the, if you're worried about the safety of, you know, Jewish institutions or people in Jewish institutions, then maybe stop supporting genocide, I would say. But okay.
Yeah, it's for me, I'm like looking at the stuff. I've looked at the stats for on school shootings for a long time. It is interesting because I hadn't looked at them. It's funny, I say I looked at them for a long time, but I actually had not looked at them since probably 2023. And what I saw today when I really pulled up the stats was there actually has been a massive spike. And I can't tell though if the spike has come from just kind of broadening the classification of what counts as a school shooting,
Hmm.
or if in fact the shootings have gone up. Because before I used to kind of be of the opinion, people don't like to hear it, but school shootings are actually kind of rare. It's
Yeah.
not saying that they don't happen, and of course they should never happen, but as far as like kids killed, because I remember at one point I looked at from 2000, the 2001 school year to the 2021-2022 school year, so that's pretty much 21 years. The total number of kids actually killed in school shootings was like 160, which is very sad. I'm not saying it's not, but you got to think over 20 years period. That's actually not that many.
Right.
To put it in
Well,
perspective, more.
clearly you're fine with kids dying if you say that. I'm
Right,
kidding.
right, yeah, you're
I'm
not allowed to
joking.
look
I'm
at
joking.
stuff like
No,
that.
I
But
know, yeah.
it for me, stuff like that, like hearing statistics like that, it puts my mind at ease. Like, okay, like
Well,
maybe
exactly.
it's
That actually
yeah,
makes me feel much better as a
yeah,
parent of a young child because I
yeah.
actually thought it was way more than that from the media. And this is again like feel like we dealt with this stuff during COVID, where it's like, well, you don't care about blah blah. Blah. Well,
Hmm.
no, it's not that I don't care about that. And like, frankly, there's a few issues I care more about now that I have a child who's going to go to school
Right,
soon. But when you use resources for something, those are resources that can't be given to something else, right? If you're spending
right,
millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on security for like under questionable circumstances. Well, that's money that's not going. Those are resources that
right,
are not going to cancer research, or I'd rather they research
right,
childhood cancers. That's like something I get
right,
much more concerned, or whatever, like.
right. Yep,
But and
yep.
that it was like the same thing during COVID. Like when you shut schools down, then you have all
Oh,
sorts of other problems that the kids face. And so if you're concerned about children's
well,
well-being, you have to think in a more multi-dimensional way.
Well, yeah. So what I was interested in is when I looked up those numbers today was there actually is a big spike in quote unquote school shootings. Now, when I looked at like the actual parameters that they use, it was basically any time that guns had been fired on a school campus. So it some of it was like actually I say most of it, probably the spike was at school events like sports games, football games, things like that. Fights in the parking lot that ended up. So you're talking about like gun violence kind of thing. Not saying that's not important and everything, but when I think of school shootings, I think of what happened last week where a kid walks into the school with a gun and guns down kids in a classroom, obviously.
Yeah.
And having kind of like gang fights in the parking lot at a
Right.
school football game is it's
It's a
different. It
little
just
different. Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But that's getting classified as a school shooting as
Mm,
well. So
that's fascinating. Yeah.
yeah, so when you look at the numbers and after COVID, they spike. I mean, huge. We're going from COVID 2020, obviously the school shut down, but still there was like 160
Mm.
that year, they said. And then by 2022, the number spikes all the way up to almost 400 was the number
Wow.
that I saw. And before
Wait,
that,
that's 400 school shootings or 400?
400 school shootings.
Okay,
School.
but not
So that
children
was
dead. Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
So that was yeah, I took some pictures of it because I thought that that was oh, excuse me, it was year was 2023 and the number was 350 was the total number. And then when I started kind of looking at, I was like, gosh, that just seems like such a huge spike. So before that, the largest number was 124, but prior to that, like in from 2000 essentially all the way up, it varies from like 50 to 60. And then yeah, 2020 is kind of the year that kicks off, and then 2021 is where it just kind of shoots through the roof. So I don't know if it's that they expanded what they considered to be a school shooting or not, but again, the numbers of dead don't actually vary a whole lot from year to year, which is interesting.
That
But
is interesting. I do have to tell you there's a funny comment, not in the chat, but on my post about our live, which said, turns the heater on at 78, repeal the 19th. That I actually know men who also like it at that temperature, so that's definitely
you know
not a woman
what?
thing.
I would probably be more for you guys. I would probably be a little bit more sympathetic if the same people who said repeal the 19th didn't come in my comments with the dumbest shit imaginable to say about so much. You guys have no idea.
Yeah, well, I assume this person's joking, but you never know.
I know they are. I know they are. I know.
Hopefully.
You would not believe. You would not believe. I have guys. I had this guy the other day. I made a joke and he didn't get it that I was joking. And I'm not even kidding. He wrote like a 6-thread tweet about, he quote tweeted me and like wrote this whole thing. And I was like, how did you not see that I was joking? It was so obvious that I was joking. And he was like, look at what she said. This is why we must repeal the 19th.
That's
And
so
it's like
funny.
goes on and on and on and on about how dumb women are. And I was like,
That's so insane. Okay,
honey. That's
yeah,
all right.
I really thought we were past that, but whatever.
No, it's so funny. Like, I don't know. I just crack up sometimes at these guys. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't know. I'll give up the 19th. I would maybe support like only, actually no, I'm not gonna say that. Never mind. I'm gonna take that back. I was gonna say something and then I was like, oh my god, no, they'll never shut up. They'll clip that and like these are the terms I'll accept on that. I'll give up my voting rights if you do this.
I mean, okay.
Yeah. I would maybe support, I'm gonna say this and Janine's gonna cringe, she's gonna hate me, but I would maybe support some kind of like intelligence test on voting. But the problem is if you've ever seen the poll tests, they were so stupid. And it's why I just hate those like super racist Southerners from the 60s, because you see this crap and it's like, this is why we can't even talk about it now, because you guys were such assholes back then, right?
Yeah.
And so now, and you guys just ruined it. Yeah, with this dumb stuff, like really dumb stuff. Have you ever taken one of those tests? They're nuts.
No, I don't think so.
I remember like Harvard administered it to like a bunch of their students and like almost no one could pass it.
That's funny.
It was so, the tests were so crazy. Like they were so stupid. But sometimes I do like come across people that are really dumb and I'm like, I feel like you shouldn't be voting,
Yeah.
It's concerning to me.
Yeah, no, I don't look. I like there are problems with democracy. I don't know. I think, what's the saying, the famous saying, like it's the best of all the bad possible systems. Like I don't, of course. Yeah. And it is concerning. You're correct when you see some of the people who like don't even understand basic separation of powers things, like,
well, just like can't even like detect a joke, like an obvious joke. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, that's gonna be a hard one to test for. Do you recognize humor before you head to the polls? You're gonna have to prove.
But sometimes I feel like you should be able to like say, hey, which one? If you ask which one is the Democrat, which one is the Republican.
Yeah.
Which policies does each candidate support? I don't know. I actually think it would require candidates to kind of curtail their messages a little bit better. But at the same time, I don't actually think that there's anything, because I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between the two parties, right? So
Yeah,
we vote for. So we can bitch and complain about that all day long, but that's the voting is not the problem. The parties are the problem, right?
that's right. Yeah, I
You know.
totally agree. That is the big fundamental issue at the root of our why
I
our
know.
country has so many problems. But so we have 10 minutes. I
Last.
don't, well, do we have time to get into this or
Yes,
should we?
we
Okay,
do.
I think we
And
have
we
5
saved it for
minutes
the
and then
best
yeah.
last.
So, I have a personal announcement, which is that I got a new job. I've been dying to fight a lot of the censorship around Palestine, and found an organization where I think I'll be able to do that in the way that I want, called the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. Some people might be familiar with it. They started in 1980. They're really trying to put together a more robust legal team and especially focused on the First Amendment. So, and we filed I filed my first brief with them over the weekend in the case of, I always forget this woman's name, Kamara Sumral versus Janine Ali. We're representing Janine Ali. These were two women who were at a pro-Palestine protest with counter-protest. Our client, Janine Ali, is a 72, I believe, year old woman who walks with a cane. She has some kind of arthritis or condition where her fingers are bent. Kamara Sumral claims that Ms. Ali walked up to her. She was wearing an Israeli flag cape, pulled the cape, and for like a moment she felt uncomfortable and couldn't breathe. Ms. Ali was arrested on assault charges, was acquitted in criminal court, D.C. Superior Court, at a bench trial with a judge. The judge found that the supposed victim and the police officer who testified on her behalf were not credible. Very rare this happens. So the judge, I think he saw some stuff, and that Ms. Ali, by contrast, was credible. She said this did not happen. The police officer was farther away than he had let on. There was video evidence that actually showed him a bit farther away. We don't know, why motive for that we'll deal with later. But in any event, didn't happen. But in order to get a second bite at the apple, Ms. Sumral brought a case in federal civil court alleging a violation of Section 1981. Which was intended to prevent the government from engaging in racial discrimination when entering into contracts with people. It requires a nexus to state action, and it requires a showing of racial animus. Now, courts have said that anti-Semitism equals racial animus, but anti-Zionism or anti-Israel conduct obviously does not. It's clear that you can protest in actions or have a problem with a nation's actions, and that's not racial animus. So, surprisingly, a district court judge in D.C., federal court, entered a preliminary injunction on behalf of Ms. Sumral, finding she was likely to prevail on the merits of her case. And this preliminary injunction contains a restraining order saying that our client, Ms. Ali, cannot come within a certain distance of Ms. Sumral. Effectively, it means she's not going to probably go to protests in D.C. because she's going to be too worried about violating the terms. Yeah. So we argued that this was problematic for a number of reasons. We just filed a motion over the weekend asking the judge to reconsider his opinion, wrong on the law, because Section 1981 requires a showing of state action. Like there has to be some connection to the state. Ms. Ali is an individual. So even if she did this, which she didn't, the statutory elements for this hate crime aren't, or racial, whatever, not crime, but civil violation, are not satisfied. And also, even if she had pulled the Israeli flag cape, that is not, contrary to what the judge said, a showing of anti-Semitic discrimination. And I think it's important to compare that to like someone walking on the street with a Star of David necklace. And, if you did that and you pulled off the necklace, okay, I think you could say maybe that's a prima facie case of anti-Semitism. But grabbing into an Israeli flag cape at a protest against the war in Gaza, I hate calling it that actually, that whatever Israel is doing in Gaza, the genocide in Gaza, is not racial animus. If you pulled on an Iranian flag because you were mad at Iran. Anyway, I've gone on for long enough. Yes, please.
Can I interrupt you real quick? Because I think it's very important to establish that Miss Ali was at a Code Pink protest,
That's right.
and the plaintiff, I guess, right? She
She
was
belongs to Beitar. Yes, I missed
she
that.
belongs to Beitar, and they showed up as a counter protest.
Yeah.
Okay, so Miss Ali is there. They are minding their own damn business, simply protesting the American government, and this Beitar group shows up to protest them, right?
Yeah.
And so again, Miss Ali is 72 years old. She walks with a cane. She has arthritis. And we're supposed to believe that she just walks on up to this woman who was, again, they were there to provoke the Code Pink people.
Yeah.
And just snatches this kind of flag. There's a reason that the judge threw the shit out. Right. You know,
I mean, I was a public defender for 9 years. I read many, many trial transcripts.
Yeah. I've never seen them.
I never saw a judge say two witnesses were not credible, and one of them being a police officer.
Right.
So he saw something.
Oh yeah, the one being the police officer. Like I've seen them say, like, oh, you know, that one isn't in whatnot, or you know, kind of throw some shade at just like in a kind of like thing. But actually, to say the police officer was not credible is that just shows you again what they're up against. But this is weird, right? This is weird that this judge kind of threw up this injunction and would again establish, you know, or say that Miss Ali is not allowed to attend these protests, which is
an infringement of her First Amendment
of course,
effectively, which is presumably what Beitar is trying to do. I think they're trying to intimidate people who are at these protests.
Yeah, Beitar, who are all Kahanas and Jewish supremacists. They are okay, and then we have
and
lots of videos.
They openly embrace and advocate for violence against people who advocate for Palestinian human rights. They did it to me, so I'm very familiar with Beitar.
We've got their people on video many a time saying Kahane was right, who was a absolute Jewish supremacist, who said that if people wanted to live in Israel, if they were not Jews, they should submit to being slaves. That was literally his philosophy. So, and then they say that Kahane was right.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So, and Ms. Ali is of Palestinian origin. I believe she grew up in Dearborn, Michigan, but her parents are Palestinian. So I look forward to working on this case. I think we will win.
I'm so excited for you. We're going to talk about it more. Yeah.
Yeah, as it goes on. And yes, it is fantasy football time in my house. So draft time.
Yep. So bye, guys. And
bye, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you Tuesday. Bye.
Bye.
Oh.